Newsday for so many years, and my son was so excited. He said, "Dad, the Newsday came out with the greatest 50 Mets." And it was this guy, Joe Jurgen, wrote the article. I said, "He's my friend. It's Joe Gergen." And Joe, talk about how this came about. You've been retired, you had a great career at Newsday. How did this come about when Newsday approached you to kind of come out of retirement and put this great piece together of the 50 greatest Mets?
Well, I think it was an accident, actually. Because of the 50th year, I guess they've been planning this all along. But somewhere along the way, they forgot to hire somebody to do it. So about a week before they ran it, they called me up and they had to get somebody who's been around a while and knows some of these players. So it came down to me, basically.
Joe, I know you said in the article that wasn't about stats. When you rated the 50 players, what were you thinking about as far as how did you want to put this list together? Because you can't just go by stats. I guess, maybe the two champions. What was your criteria? What was your thought process about putting this list together?
Well, what you wanted to do was find the people who had the greatest impact on the franchise. So obviously the championships, if you weren't part of a championship, it's hard to put you high in that list. If you were, and they only had 2 championships, but they have had 4 teams in the World Series, so they're at least, you've got 4 teams to build around. It's unfortunate, there's a lot of great players who go through baseball and never get to a championship. It does hurt their stature, But in this case, you want to pay at least, maybe you didn't win a championship, but at least help build a championship. That's kind of my first thought on how you get to pick. Secondly, would be, years of service. Obviously, if you landed 2 players, one had 10 good years, the other had 5, you're going to pick the guy with 10.
Joe, a couple of things that, like we mentioned before the show is that, when you come out with a piece, not everyone's going to agree with everything. And it makes for a great conversation. One guy I felt should have been a lot higher on the list was Carlos Beltran. In my opinion, 5-time All-Star, 2 Silver Slugger Awards, had 112 RBIs 3 times. And you know what? I think the biggest tragedy, I think the thing that really bothers me about Beltran is that a lot of people blame him for the final strikeout. Yet in that series against St. Louis, in Game 2 he had the game-winning home run. In Game 4 he had 2 home runs that won that game. So I think he takes too much of the blame. What was your thoughts about putting Beltran as low as 20?
I agree with you. I think he does get blamed for that, the playoff loss. And he came in with such a big expectation because of the contract, a lot of players. And compared to others, he lived up to, part of it lived up to them anyway, at least in the early years. Injuries have plagued him during his career. There's a lot of things go into it. I agree with you. If you had to pick somebody who maybe deserved a little higher run, he'd be one of them. But he didn't. He wasn't part of a championship team. He was that close.
Right.
And if he gets a hit there, he's a hero forever. Let's face it, he would have been top 10 probably. Yeah. That's the way it goes in life.
All right, now we're going to, Carmine, big Met fan. Did you read the article?
Yes, I did.
Carmine, what was your thought of the 50 greatest Mets? What are some things that struck you about that list?
Well, I thought it brought back a lot of great memories for me. Some of my favorite players you mentioned, Tom Seaver, Mike Piazza, Jerry Koosman, just to name a few. And I think Joe did a great job. It's a tough job to try to create any kind of a list like that, but I think Joe did a great job in picking out the Mets that had a great impact on the franchise.
Yeah, and Joe, I really think you did a super job. And honestly, I only felt there was 2 guys on that list that, in my opinion, didn't belong there. Number 1 was Billy Wagner. When you look at Billy Wagner's stats, they were outstanding as far as stats go. 2-time All-Star, 2.37 ERA. But the problem I had with Billy Wagner, he imploded in big games. He blew big games against the Phillies. He had that horrible game against the Yankees where he had a 4-run lead and hit everyone and walked everyone and blew a beautiful 8-inning shutout by Pedro. And I looked at, my son helped me with these stats. He had 1 playoff appearance and he had an ERA of 16.88. He gave up 5 runs in 2 innings. And I just never trusted him in big games. What's your thoughts on Billy Wagner?
Well, you see where he is. He's not exactly in the top 10.
Yeah.
I think there's like maybe 4 or 5 pitchers, maybe 6.
Yeah.
I thought he was damn good for most of the time he was here. Once again, he didn't win a championship, so he fell down with some of the others. Who could you put in there instead? Armando Benitez?
No, not him.
Same problem, right?
Yeah.
Great numbers during the regular season.
Yeah.
If you're getting down in the 40s, it's pretty close. You can pick. I know before you talked to me about Rick Reed.
Yeah, I thought
I
he
put
should
Bobby
have.
Jones instead of him.
Yeah.
Very similar pitcher.
Yeah.
Bobby Jones had the one great player for you. It's very similar. You know, you talk to him, he was in the 40s now. These are not Hall of Famers, so we're getting down to inches.
Right, right. Steve, one of the interesting guys on the list that I went back and forth with because, on one hand, a no-brainer. On the other hand, not a no-brainer. It's Ray Ordonez. Great defensive player, a weak hitter. What's your thoughts on having Ray Ordonez on the list? Because I think he was a guy that you could go both ways with.
Well, the Mets have had some great shortstops in their time, and Buddy's on the list, and they've had these great defensive shortstops. They've never really had any super hitters until Jose Reyes came aboard, and he broke all those records for the Mets as a shortstop. One name that I know that wasn't missing, and the Mets have made some drastic trades in their time. Nolan Ryan, probably one of the greatest pitchers ever, who was a Met for how many years was he a Met? And just never gave, them what he could deliver. I mean, here's a team that, like I said, until this year had no hitters, but they had so many guys that left the team, David Cohn and Dwight Gooden and all these guys. But Nolan was probably, also one of those guys. The name that I'd like to see also, even though he wasn't a player, Casey Stengel was kind of the face of the Mets back then. But as a diehard Met for 50 years, I've had my suffering days.
There's another guy I want to bring up, Carmine. What do you think about, I know he wasn't a great pitcher, but he had 11 years of service to the Mets, and I think he pitched on a lot of bad teams, and I think he was a pretty good pitcher, and he did it over 11 years. Craig Swan.
Yeah. I think Craig Swan was like the ace of the Mets for many of those bad years. I think, he didn't have a lot of run production, not a lot of great defense behind him. I think he was a better pitcher than his record actually showed. On another team, I think he could have been a bigger winner. But I think he gave the Mets really, like you said, 11 great years. And he was a favorite of mine. I enjoyed watching him pitch.
Joe, did you give any thought to Craig? So I know he's one of those borderline guys, but I kind of thought that he was a guy that suffered pitching on a lot of bad teams.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine called right away and said he thought Craig Swan should have been there. And like I said, another era, he probably would have won a championship with the team. He was good enough. He just, the same guy also said he wanted Mark Thornberry in the team.
Right.
So now, because he was the Mets, quote unquote, for a year or two, if you want to go back to that era, it's fun.
And the other one, I kind of thought, another borderline guy. It's fun to talk about these guys because I think when you get down to 40, it's really tough to leave some guys off. Another guy I thought was a really outstanding pitcher was Randy Myers. He had a lifetime ERA with the Mets of 2.74. In the 88 playoffs, he had a 0 ERA. I think about Randy Myers, he wasn't the prototypical closer, but he was a good middle relief guy, spot starter. What's your thoughts on Randy Myers?
Yeah, I thought, but once again, you could put him in the top 50. He just wasn't the main guy.
Right.
So, for instance, I got Leiter pretty high. When I made this list, they didn't have, and they realized that he was their ace for a few years.
Right.
So he was pitching against the best player in the other team. Where some of these guys, you get a Bobby Jones or some of that ilk, Reed, those guys, they weren't pitching against the best team. So in a way, their records were kind of confused that way. So I think Leiter was the lead guy, had to take a lot more hits that way.
Steve, some of the guys that were high up on the list, and one guy that jumps out is Gary Carter. I thought he really was the missing link, and he had so much enthusiasm, defense, clutch. What's your memories of Gary Carter?
I've had the opportunity to meet Gary several times, and not only was he a great player, motivator, he's just a really great guy. I mean, I don't think anybody's ever had a bad word to say about Gary. He's a leader, and he was the face of the Mets for many years. No question, good pitchers are only as good as the catcher behind there, and he was tremendous when he was catching some of these great guys. Gary Gentry's another guy that was probably could have been on that list as well.
He stayed longer.
Right, a little longer.
Yeah. Carmine, you mentioned a guy before, and following the Mets all these years, I don't think I've ever been more excited about an acquisition when the Mets picked up Mike Piazza. There's some things like when a guy's up, you want to go to the bathroom. When Mike Piazza was up, he's a guy you wanted to watch. Talk about Mike Piazza's impact on the Mets.
I think Mike Piazza really, when he came over, automatically made the Mets into a real pennant contender. Was a tremendous hitter. Arguably maybe one of the all-time best hitting catchers. And he just brought instant excitement. As you said, Howie, when Mike Piazza was up, you did not want to miss that at bat because you always expected Mike Piazza to deliver some kind of a big hit. And probably one of the biggest hits he ever delivered was the first game that was played after 9/11. Mike Piazza came up against the Braves in the 8th inning and hit that tremendous home run. And I think that that really had a powerful impact on the city. And I think he'll always be remembered for that moment.
Absolutely, Carmine. Your number one guy was Tom Seaver. Great pitcher, Hall of Famer, one of the greatest ever. Was there any lingering doubt in your mind to put Piazza ahead of him, Joe? Because, I mean, I agree with Tom Seaver. I mean, I think if he had better offense behind him, he would even won more games. But what's your thoughts about putting Seaver at the top? I mean, I agree with you. But what's your thought process of putting Seaver and then Piazza?
Well, I think Seaver kind of defined the franchise for the first 10, 12, 13 years. I mean, he kind of made them professionals. He gave them an image that they didn't have before. Plus the fact he could pitch. Last of all. They've never come close to, I don't think, any position, anybody hit the kind of length. Piazza had a great impact, but he was there for what, 5-6 years. Yeah. You know, they had been to several championships. Nobody else in that top 10 lasted very long.
Right.
Seaver, and unfortunately, Seaver didn't need it when you think about it, because he got, well, you know how they screwed around with Seaver.
Yeah.
If he had played his whole career there, you're talking about a guy who won over 300 games. I mean, that's not going to happen. You're talking about a guy who, well, he basically, he was an actual pitcher state for 5 years in most of them. I mean, it's just, he also, you know, there's a professionalism he carried with him that he didn't have before, and most of the times they don't have. There's just a winning effort, a winning attitude.
Final question. As a Met fan, 50 years of history, Carmine, what was it like this year when the curse was finally broken and Johan Santana pitched that no-hitter? Was it a sense of relief being a Met fan that you didn't have to listen to anymore, that they never knew a no-hitter? What was it like for you seeing Santana pitch that no-hitter?
Well, for me, I was just, it's so exciting because a no-hitter is so rare in baseball. It's difficult to do. Obviously, the fact that the Mets hadn't thrown one in 50 years added to the excitement. But, you know, just watching that 9th inning, you know, I was watching it with my wife, a couple of my sons in the living room, and, you know, every pitch, we were holding our breath and we were saying, could this be it? Could this be it? I remember watching Seaver take a couple of those no-hit bids into the 9th inning, and he unfortunately came up short, but it was very exciting to watch Johan.
Can we say that that was a magical moment on the diamond? And I'm going to ask Steve Diamond what he thought of that magical moment on the diamond with Johan Santana.
I was down there watching the game also in my house, and all of a sudden I called my wife and said, you got to come down here. Something's happening. I feel it. Especially after the one hit that could have been a hit, got turned around and was fall foul. So you knew something was going on. Then a tremendous catch. So those are the games that you just feel something's going to happen. I felt it. I had tears in my eyes when he threw it, and it was definitely a magical moment.
All right, we have to end that segment. Let's give it up. A great job, a great article. Legendary run. Let's give it up to Joe Gergen. The best insurance company in Long Beach, White & Tittle. And the best softball coach in New York State, the one and only Carmine Murray. What I want to know after the break is what it's like being married for 70 years. We're going to get that amazing question answered after the break when we bring up the Lido Beach Civic Association. All right, this is Halftime Howie coming to you live from the Avenue Cafe. And more fun on Long Island's first and oldest station, 1240 AM, WGBB.